Reynaldo Lopez, who was kind of the secondary piece in the Adam Eaton trade that saw him go from Washington to the Chicago White Sox. Um, Let me see. What can I tell you about Lopez? I like him, but I think he is a prime sell candidate if you're an owner. If you think you can buy him on the cheap, I would avoid. I would not be targeting a guy like Reynaldo Lopez. He was likely destined for relief work in Washington, and now with the fresh start, no pun intended, now with the fresh start to remain a rotation piece in Chicago, I think he's still ultimately a reliever. He turned 23 just a week ago, beginning of January. So he's still on the young side, and there's room to think that, he can still develop. But as well as, he's already also got a taste in the bigs. Results were kind of mixed on that. He blipped on the radar with 14 good Double-A starts. Was it a year ago or 2 years ago? And that is beginning to look more and more like the outlier than him reaching a new level, which is really kind of what worries me about him. His Ks per nine were always around an 8 or just a shade under. And in that Double-A stint that I referenced, they shot up to nearly 12 per nine. Last year in Triple-A, they returned back to his career normals. And at the majors, they stayed around the same, just a shade under 8 per nine. And what was interesting to me is they tried him out in the bullpen. They tried him out as a starter. He had about equal appearances in both. And his power numbers were actually better as a starter than they were in the bullpen. So I don't even know if he is, poised for a closer role. I would take advantage of his name recognition right now, and I would try to sell high if you are indeed an owner of him, because I think he ultimately has, middle relief or long relief as his future calling card. So, Ralph, are you a Lopez believer?
I think I'm right with you, man. I see long-term Lopez as being a relief guy. And the thing that's troubling to me about Lopez isn't the size. A lot of people, I think, make the lazy relief comp because he's a 6-foot righty. He's got a stocky build. I think he could be a starter. He's got a starter's body just because he's small. Height-wise, he's not 6'5" or whatever. Doesn't mean that I think he's, more susceptible to injury or any of those sort of things. What I do think is that his mechanics make him more susceptible to injury. I think that his mechanics make him more susceptible to breaking down. He's a guy that throws 100-mile-an-hour just about fastball, does touch triple digits from time to time. He's got a slurvy curveball that he mixes with it. And then his third pitch is a very average to almost fringe changeup. And his arm speed's okay, so I don't really worry about it too much. I wonder if maybe projecting it as average is maybe me being a little bit too optimistic with him. Because it's not a great pitch yet. And he doesn't throw it a whole lot, doesn't have a lot of confidence. So he's a 2-pitch guy. He's small, and has had one stint where his stuff was really nasty as a starter, which was that time at Harrisburg in Double-A in the Eastern League, which is a pitcher's league on top of it, not a hitter's league. So I'm definitely very skeptical about him. The K per nine stuff with a 100-mile-per-hour fastball and a good breaking pitch really kind of makes me scratch my head. Like, why isn't this guy striking out 9 to 10 batters per nine in Triple-A and all throughout the minors? And he hasn't been. So now he's with the White Sox. Let's see if he does end up starting or not. I actually think the White Sox have a crop of potentially really interesting pen guys. If this guy ends up in the pen, where you could have a guy like Lopez, pair him up with Fulmer, who I still think long term is going to be a reliever. I think it's best suited for that role. And the first round pick this year is Zach Birdie, who's another guy who's going to be, long term already a closer sort of in waiting.
Right.
So I think he could be a potential relief option. I don't think he's going to end up in the pen this year, or at least early on. I think they do try to start him. I wouldn't be shocked if he breaks camp at part of the rotation, or at least, comes up maybe late in April and makes some starts. I think they're going to try him as a starter first. I think long term, a year from now, he's probably going to end up in a relief role, and he could excel at it because of his makeup and the stuff that he's got.
Okay, but and that, that's fine. And if he does get it, like I said, he should very well get a chance to remain a starter. Now that he's on what can only be considered a rebuilding White Sox team at this point, right? Even though they do have some nice veterans in place, but are you excited about him as a starter? I mean, when we get excited about prospects and we get excited, especially about pitching prospects, we get excited over power guys, over elite numbers, over high strikeout rates. This is not that guy. So even if he does remain a starter and somewhat effective where he can remain in the rotation, we talked about this with Jose Quintana. They don't provide much run support. So where is he getting his wins from? You know, do you think he's going to go deep into games to even be in the mix to get quality starts? I don't see any of that stuff happening, especially not this year for him. And that's on the high end. So, you know, even him reaching what I feel his ceiling could be is not a very desirable fantasy pitcher. Again, that's, you know, that's not to say this guy can't be, you know, have 15 years of success in the majors and, you know, find a home and, you know, stay with one team or bounce around from team to team. But as far as a fantasy guy, I think he's waiver wire material. And the fact that he has this name recognition right now puts you as an owner in a unique position to really kind of max out on a guy that you're probably not going to get much from if you hold on to him.
Yeah, and of the four arms that the White Sox acquired at the deadline, he's the one that, or the deadline, back in the winter, or winter meetings or whatever. He's the one that I like the least. You know, I like Kopech the best, followed by Giolito, and I even like Dan Dunning more than I like him.